Mike, and welcome to my first video ever. Most probably the last one too. I've heard lots of people complaining about the combat system in Darkwood, so I'm gonna show you that you can kill pretty much anything in the game using the most basic weapon there is, and perhaps share some tips that will hopefully make survival a little bit easier. But let's start with some basics. There are two types of attack at your disposal in Darkwood. The first one, the regular attack, is done by right-clicking and holding to prepare your weapon, then left-clicking to attack. And while having your weapon readied, you can move freely, but you cannot run. This is important. The second attack, the so-called alternative attack, is done by clicking the middle mouse button. It's much faster, but depletes stamina really quickly. The same thing applies to using Molotovs, by the way. You right-click and hold to prepare to cook a Molotov, then left-click to throw it at a place of your desire. It's really reliable and precise. What you don't really want to do, typically, is just right-click and release, because then your character gonna drop the Molotov, it cannot be picked up, and eventually it will blow up. It can be useful while running away from enemies, when you want to leave them a surprise, otherwise, not really. The first type of enemy you'll find in Darkwood are doggies. Now, they aren't very dangerous and they don't deal much damage, but first of all, they very often come in packs, and secondly, at the beginning of the game, your health bar isn't all that impressive and it's really easy to die, so you can't really afford to lose any health. Like with any other type of enemies found in the game, take your time, don't rush it. Dogs have this specific aggro zone, so if you go near them, they'll turn to you and start growling. Just stop, don't move any further, wait for them to come to you. Right click and hold to prepare your weapon, left click to attack, finish them off with middle mouse button. It's really simple. And knowing the extent of this aggro zone, you can easily pull a single dog out of a pack. This one actually glitched out on me, but well, I just put it out of misery. Now, if you don't feel confident enough, you can always use meat that you can loot from dogs, throw it as bait, and it will distract you, the doggies. From that moment on, they will totally ignore you. You can approach them safely and club them to death one after another. Later on in the game, you will find a bigger version of the dogs. These are called mutated dogs, if I'm not mistaken. They are simply bigger, faster, more aggressive, deal more damage, and take more hits. But the tactic is pretty much the same. You wait for them to come, bash them on the head, while backing up, rinse and repeat. Not much to it. Everything is about timing and taking your time, really. The second type of enemy you're bound to encounter in Darkwood are savages. They typically inhabit the second area, the woods. Sometimes they pop up at night in the meadows, but here, this is the gateway passage between the first and the second area, is where you'll probably meet them for the very first time. It's sort of a test of skills. If you can take this guy out, it means you're ready to proceed. You can advance to the woods. But this fight can be challenging for a number of reasons, really. One is there's not much room to move about, to maneuver, to evade his attacks. Secondly, the very fight itself is something entirely different from what you experience with the dogs, and it calls for different tactics, different approach. There are basically three things that you have to bear in mind when fighting savages. One is that their reach is superior to whatever weapon you can find, and you have to position yourself exactly just outside the reach. Secondly, their attack pattern is pretty limited. It consists in a side-to-side swing and a vertical top-down ground bashing attack, let's call it. You wanna jump in and deal some damage as soon as they finish executing one of these moves. Preferably the top-down attack. It's safer, simply. The swings can be done in succession, and if you do it wrong, you can get caught up in between attacks. The third thing is stamina, and which is as important as health, if not more important. Since you'll be using the alternative attack against these guys, it depletes stamina more quickly, and it's easy to end up out of breath. I've heard lots of people complaining about not being able to secure the second hideout, that's this bit here, and that's okay, that's perfectly understandable. This is not an easy task, for two reasons basically. One, there's a bunch of savages out there, which alone can be pretty challenging, and secondly, perhaps more importantly, there's this time pressure, meaning by the time you discover the second hideout it's usually around 3-4 p.m, and if you want to do it in one go, you may have this feeling that there is not enough time. Truth is that the more you rush it, the more likely you are to make silly mistakes, and these, more often than not, result in death. Don't get me wrong, I made my share of mistakes in this video, you'll see, but I'd still suggest taking your time, really. Also, do yourself a favor and come prepared. I'm using a plank with nails for a show and to prove my point, but by this time you can have an axe or a shovel from Wolf. You can find a gun, which is not that difficult, and this will make the whole thing much easier. There's always an enemy in this shack here, a rock thrower, which I haven't discussed yet, I will in a moment, and there's also a key, which you may want to retrieve. And admittedly I messed up here a little bit. I should have hit it twice and retreated, wait for it to come to me, but I kind of fell victim to what I said before, I was rushing. Here you can see two savages. I wouldn't risk fighting both of them at the same time with melee, so I use a Molotov, which is also a risky thing to do, by the way, because as they try to close the gap between you and them, you may end up throwing a Molotov right in front of you and get caught in the splash damage. This is the rock thrower I mentioned before. He's not much of a threat here, he's more of a nuisance. You want to break the line of sight and wait for him to come to you. I, however, got impatient and rushed a bit too soon, missed like an asshole, and couldn't decide whether I want to attack or hide from it. Now, I depleted my stamina, and this is why I got hit. This is why I lost health. I was pretty much confident because I know this is the last guy in the area, but otherwise it wasn't a very good attempt. Anyway, the only thing left to do is plant the bucket of victory and claim the second hideout. As I barricade myself in what I believe is the best place to make a stand, let's talk a bit about surviving a night. Now, there is this glitch, or a cheat I'd say, which consists in hiding behind a wardrobe pretty much, and it's extremely effective. Actually, it's so effective that you no longer have to worry about nights in Darkwood. Unfortunately, it also does extremely well at killing the atmosphere of the game. So I'm gonna show you an alternative. I'm gonna show you my setup for the first hideout, which I've been using for some time now, and hopefully you'll find it useful. As you can see, I barricaded myself in the room with 3 windows, which I find to be the easiest one to defend yourself in. Also, I set up 3 bear traps, one in front of each window. You don't really need that many, as long as you have one in your inventory. That's you're good, because it takes some time for the savages to get through the barricade, and it's enough to allow you to set up the trap. two things happen when something steps into your trap. One is it loses considerable part of its health, and the second thing is it gets stunned, and this is the important bit. It gives you plenty of time to finish it off. Now, you may know that I pushed a wardrobe against the door, but bear in mind that it won't keep things outside. It won't prevent enemies from entering the room, unless you actually push against a piece of furniture, which I find pretty lame. Another one is coming from the south. This one gonna be saved by the daylight, but you'll see that as soon as it jumps in, it gets stunned. Exactly the same deal here. It's just that I decided to greet my guest with a Molotov because reasons. It's a waste of Molotov if you ask me, but why not? And there's one more creature that can visit you at night, and I wasn't fortunate enough to meet one on this playthrough. It's a banshee, bird-like looking creature that just wanders around, and as soon as you touch it or hit it, it lets out a loud shriek, which disables all your electricity. I won't be discussing the third area much because, well, I don't really want to spoil the fun. Just a friendly word of advice: you don't want to go beyond this bridge with just a plank with nails. It simply won't do. The area gets really dark at times, and you have to rely on flares much. There's not always enough room to kite the monsters, and there are many of those, and they are tough too. Like this one. This is a jumper, admittedly the weaker of two. There's also a black one, and it's not even that it's difficult, and it just requires good timing and much room to retreat. But in the old woods, you'll very often encounter two or three at the same time, and then going up against them with the plank would be a suicide pretty much. And that, as they say, is that. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed the video and hope it was somewhat helpful. Also, do let me know if you think I missed something important. Enjoy this awesome game, and try to remember that dying is part of the fun. Even with permadeath on. Actually, come to think of it, maybe even more so. See you around.